And God said, "Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together to one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after its kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth." And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, an herb yielding seed after its kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after its kind. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. Genesis 1:9-13. Genesis describes the moment when the waters pull back, dry land emerges, and the earth becomes a place that can sustain life. In the scientific reconstruction of Earth's history, these changes also take place in this same sequence: land rising from the oceans, followed by the development of an atmosphere capable of supporting vegetation. The difference lies only in the timescale, not the order. In Earth's earliest ages, small patches of solid crust cooled enough to form islands surrounded by a vast global ocean. These early foundations, called cratons, grew gradually as new rock rose from inside the planet and attached itself to them. Over hundreds of millions of years, these cratons expanded into the first true continents. Driven by heat deep within the Earth, the continents slowly drifted across the planet's surface. Sometimes they moved apart, other times they collided. Their motion wasn't random. Heat rising from the mantle below pushed and pulled the plates, opening new oceans in some places while closing oceans in others. Because of this continual movement, the continents repeatedly assembled into supercontinents and then broke apart again. One of the earliest giant landmasses was Rodinia, formed nearly 1 billion years ago. Over time, the heat building underneath Rodinia weakened it. As molten rock rose and stretched the crust from below, Rodinia eventually split into several large pieces. These drifting fragments wandered the planet for hundreds of millions of years before slowly coming together again, this time forming a new supercontinent known as Pangaea around 250 million years ago. Later still, the forces that once united Pangaea eventually tore it apart, creating the continents and oceans we know today. Through all of these shifts, we see the very pattern Genesis describes: the gathering of waters, the rising of land, and the shaping of great seas. Meanwhile, Earth's atmosphere was undergoing its own transformation, preparing the planet to support life. In the beginning, the atmosphere contained almost no oxygen. Instead, it was made up of volcanic gases, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrogen, and water vapor. But within the oceans, tiny organisms were already at work. Early microbes, able to use sunlight to make their own energy, began releasing oxygen as a byproduct. For millions of years, this oxygen had nowhere to go. It reacted with iron in the oceans and rocks, turning them into rusted minerals. But once these minerals were saturated, oxygen finally began accumulating in the air. This slow, steady rise of oxygen, often called the Great Oxygenation Event, changed everything. With more oxygen in the atmosphere, sunlight could penetrate the oceans more easily. Temperatures began to stabilize, and eventually, the air became rich enough to support complex life. As Earth warmed after long periods of global glaciation, and as oxygen continued to fill the atmosphere, the land was finally ready. The first simple plants began to take root, followed by seed-bearing species and early trees echoing the words in Genesis: grass, herbs, and fruit trees, each appearing after its kind. Beneath the oceans, however, life was advancing even more dramatically. Complex creatures were forming and multiplying in ways that Scripture will describe in the days ahead. The seas were becoming places filled with movement and abundance, preparing for what the next stage of creation would reveal. Day 3 brings the world from water-covered and lifeless to stable, green, and filled with the beginnings of life. And both scripture and science, each in its own language, describe this same unfolding order. First the land, then the vegetation, and soon the living creatures that will fill the seas and the sky.